welcome back to Reclaim You. I'm here with my friend Megan, and we are celebrating season 2. Welcome to the pod, Megan.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you here. Megan is super cool. She's a dietitian, owns a practice with therapy and nutrition services in the Lehigh Valley. And yeah, I'm really excited to have her on because she's just like a wealth of information and a really badass clinician that we love to work with and send folks to. So glad to have you here.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So to start, what I ask everyone is, what does Reclaim You mean to you?
I was thinking about this. I think Reclaim You means that, especially for what my journey has looked like for body image and my own recovery, is reclaiming back my power. Power being my relationship with my body, my relationship with food, not allowing other people or diet culture to dictate that, which has taken a lot of work, but it's been good.
Yeah. Hard work and brave work for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So today, Megan is going to be talking a bit about chronic pain and body image, the intersection of the two, and sharing some of her story. And we can get into maybe some, different ways to think of it or strategies, or we'll kind of see where the conversation goes. But yeah, I'd love to hear some of your story with body image, chronic pain, how they've kind of exacerbated maybe each other. I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to that isn't spoken about a lot or enough in the eating disorder or disordered eating spaces.
Yeah, 100%. Before I even talk about what my story has looked like, I just want to give the caveat. I am not a doctor and I am not an expert in this whatsoever.
Same.
So anything that I'm saying is only what's working for me, and it might not work for someone else, and I'm still navigating this.
Yeah.
So I have no right answers. And I'm also going to be talking about the reproductive system and all of those things too. So trying to think about timelines. Last May, I have been on birth control for the majority of my life. And last May, I was like, I guess I'm just going to get off of it. I don't really have big feelings about it, but I was just like, I'm just going to see what my body does. I started to get off of it, and my life turned to hell. I started having menstrual cycles that were really intense. My periods would last 10 to 12 days and have really significant bleeding to the point where we were talking about iron infusions.
Wow.
I'd be on iron supplements, which if anyone has been on iron supplement before, those are not fun. GI wise, they wreak havoc.
Yep.
And so I had started to have this really intense pain when I would have my period. And then it even started to go outside of my period too. So I was in pain every single day, to the point where I was like, there's no way that this is normal. But also I was gaslighting myself and being like, just deal with it.
Get over it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had gone to my own OB, and she had said, well, the pain that you're experiencing sounds pretty normal. Periods aren't fun. You're going to be crampy anyway. So it also could be endometriosis or PCOS, but we're not entirely sure because we can't, the treatments for those are birth control. So just get back on birth control and see how it goes. And I felt so dismissed and
that's the word that comes to mind. Yeah, that's the word that comes to mind.
Yeah. So I ended up going to a different GYN, and she had kind of said the same thing, but more so along the lines of well, why don't you try cutting out dairy and gluten, and maybe it's a dietary thing. Coming from a GYN, talking to a dietitian, which That's like my number one pet peeve.
Oh,
People telling
yeah.
me nutrition advice. One, being in recovery, I like straight up, I can't hear that stuff. Like, I don't want to hear it. It's going to trigger the hell out of me.
Mhm.
And then all of my knowledge goes out the window.
Yep. Yep.
So then I was like, oh my God, I can't see her again. Like, I will not do this. So after going down like a Reddit black hole and even talking to, like, hearing my clients' stories about their menstrual cycles, I had begun to explore a little bit more about what endometriosis looks like. And I found this pelvic floor physical therapist in my area and was wondering, okay, maybe I can start here. Maybe she would have some insights and we'll kind of see how it goes. Started meeting with her, and she has been and still is like the most validating person in my life for this. She was like, yeah, this sounds like this, like endometriosis. And this is like the next steps. Like, how do we navigate your pain? Because like you can't live like this. And she had recommended a certain surgeon, which in my area, there's no one that specializes in endo up here. So I have to go down to Philly area for it. I've been meeting with that doctor, went back on birth control for a little bit, wreaked havoc on my mental health, like was so depressed, could not get out of bed. And which is like the weird thing because I had been on birth control for the majority of my life. And he was like, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So then now I'm on a different medication. But the caveat with this medication is that it increases my risk of breast cancer. So I'm 28 and I have to start having mammograms soon.
Yeah.
And then also navigating like the hormonal shifts too.
The hormonal shifts, yeah.
Which has just been like a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout all of this, pelvic floor PT, I'm also seeing a back PT because my pain is largely in my back. And then this surgeon, this pain that I have experienced has just been like debilitating to the point where I'm like calling my mom in tears, like can't breathe and can't even fathom like getting out of bed to go to the ER. Like lying on my bathroom floor wishing I would pass out. Actually having flu-like symptoms, like I would be developing fevers when I was in like such pain. So through this, I've been doing just like so much research on like how the hell can this like literally go overnight and my life just changed, because I had no social life and I'm getting back into a space where I can go out. I'm on pain meds 24/7, which I've developed like other GI complications from.
Yeah.
I can't live a normal life right now. And again, I'm starting to get back to that space, but before was like very just depressed. And seeing my therapist once a week, it was just like still not enough. So throughout all of this, it just kind of got me thinking about like, oh my gosh, I am now understanding what it's like to actually relate to my clients who do have chronic pain. And this is something that I'm just going to be living with for the rest of my life. I also know that part of endo is having surgery too. That can be a part of someone's journey. I'm not there yet, but again, that's just like a part of what my journey has looked like. So throughout all of this, my recovery got a little bit shakier, to be like completely honest. It was really rough for a minute. And then on top of that, body image was like hell.
Yep.
The just being reminded every day, like every minute of every day, that I have a body is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it took so long in therapy with my therapist to be able to do the work of like, how do I work with this instead of feeling okay, my body is against me in this moment.
Yeah.
And I'm still working through it. So all of that to say is it has been a ride
Yeah.
and a nightmare, but I also have like a deeper understanding of my relationship with my body too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's quite a story. And you're still living it right now, still kind of figuring it out. It's still in the messy middle, like you said.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm so glad that you were able to find providers who are affirming and who are really set on working with you to figure this out and support you in like doing whatever it is you have to do to try to ease some of the, I would imagine, fear of the pain, the actual pain, the ripples of the pain, right? That like reminder that you are living in a body that feels like is fighting against you a lot of the time.
I think the other level to it too is I was so terrified that I was going to be turned away because I do live in a larger body.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I have like the most amazing therapist in the world. And every time I would go to a new appointment, she would call ahead for me and like do the work of like, are there any BMI cutoffs to work with this doctor?
Mm-hmm.
I had it in my head that I would go to this surgeon that I'm seeing now and he would be like, just lose weight and
Yep.
like deal with it. But it wasn't like that. I have not come into contact with anyone on my treatment team who has brought up weight or body size at all, which has just
Mm-hmm.
been incredible.
Yes.
Um,
The
but
way
that's
that
like
it should
another,
be, the way that it
yeah,
should be. That traditionally is not, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which is just like another level that thankfully I have not had to deal with. But I know a lot of people of, especially like my clients that are in larger bodies and have chronic pain and nothing's being done about it.
I'm thinking about just like as you share that, I'm feeling like the like bracing for you, like the bracing for like when the pain happens or how to tolerate the pain, how to get through the pain episodes, right? Wondering when it's going to happen again, even like wondering what's going to happen at these doctor's appointments. And this like rumble of fear, I would imagine, of some sort. I'm sure lots of rumbles underneath, but I'm particularly thinking of the rumble of fear underneath that's just like there and ever present. And this kind of like contraction and bracing and waiting, which I would imagine from like a body perspective would impact the pain as well, right? Like maybe would make it that much worse or palpable or something.
Yeah. It's interesting, like the way that you phrase that too, because I feel that. And at the same time, I feel like my anxiety around it and my pain, they influence each other. But in
Mhm.
the beginning, when someone, I don't know, like a random person I would be talking to would be like, oh my gosh, I wonder if like just even the thought of like this could be in my head and
Hmm.
this isn't like a tangible thing and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, maybe it's just anxiety that's making it worse.
Hmm.
I was like,
Uh-huh.
I cannot hear that.
Yeah.
But now doing the work in therapy and recognizing like there's a level of just the unknown of what's happening next. I
Mhm.
live my life in between appointments right
Yep.
now. And
Yep.
it used to be I'm living my life period to period, but thankfully now with this medication, I'm not getting a period. But it's like, it's constantly on edge. Like, what's
Mhm.
next? How do I brace myself for this? How do I navigate moving forward? And I still need to do, like, very much tend to my nervous system now.
Mhm.
Because if I don't, it's just gonna make everything else worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about Peter Levine, who's I think he's the founder. Is he the founder? I should know this. Somatic experiencing is his jam, right? Like he teaches it, he preaches it. He's the guy, right? And he has this little metaphor, he holds up his fist and says, in terms of trauma, right? Like here's the trauma. And then he goes like this and he opens his hand and he said, where? And he says, where's the trauma? So it's so interesting that like contraction, like you're talking about and tending to your nervous system without tending to your nervous system. I would imagine there is this like we said, like the brace, the contraction, this like holding on and waiting. And by tending to your nervous system and finding more regulation or even like pockets of regulation, there's just this like expansion and space for ease where it doesn't feel as maybe impactful to brace and hold and wait and imagine and all of those things.
Yeah, which I'm still trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like every day it's still like a new thing that I'm trying to figure out.
Uh-huh.
And what worked last week for me to relax does not work this week.
Yeah.
To figure out like, all right, back to the drawing board.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that has been like the constant though for me over the past year like has been therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have made it, I don't know if I would say like a pact with myself, but I've just made it a very much a priority to be like, this has to be consistent. I have to be going weekly. Like and when I have to skip a week or two in between, like I feel it. And it's really hard for me to regulate by myself at this point.
Well, yeah, right. Because like that disconnection, the lack of support is kind of like things collapse without support. I just thought last night I was building magnetize with my son, and he built this huge building. He's making castles lately, and it was too big. There was no support to support the roof or the, I don't know, whatever it was he was trying to build. And I was like, Gray, without the support, it's going to collapse. And he's like, nah, now watch this, mom. And like the whole thing fell. So we rebuilt it. And I was like, okay, more support, more support. And he's like, nah. This kid at school told me that if I did this, it was, and I was like, okay, try, collapse. Right. And that just came into my mind because like without the support, it's easy to collapse, right? It's easy to fall into old patterns and like the depression of everything that you've gone through. I imagine like there can be a hook that can just pull you into it.
I feel like relate to that so much. I feel like I'm like the same as your son. I'm like, I could do this. This is fine.
Me too. Me too.
It's like, wait, why are you crying every day? Oh yeah.
Right. Because there's no support. There's no no infrastructure. And without the support too, like that attunement and the co-regulation that happens in therapy, right? Like you trust your therapist and you love your therapist and all of those things. It moves mountains, right?
Yeah. I'm curious, since you are so very much into like the somatic experience, what has like the regulation, even just with working with clients with chronic pain and navigating the body image stuff, like what has been helpful to bring in from your somatic experiencing training into those sessions?
You know, it's so interesting to think about like body image and body image attacks, how it makes a lot of sense when the body is in a state of like fight or flight, or even in some sort of collapse, right? When you're having like a body image attack, right? I would imagine it's some sort of fight or flight response happening in your nervous system, because what happens in here is going to happen in here. Our bodies are a filing cabinet for our minds, right? So if our mind is doing something, our body is certainly doing something. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're at war with your body internally, like the interoceptive sense is that there's this like fight response, like cycling that hasn't been completed, it makes a lot of sense that we're going to start to fight against ourselves cognitively and like looking into a mirror or a reflection or a picture or whatever it is. Those survival responses, they happen so unconsciously that you could look at a picture and things could be like churning inside, or you could look in a reflection or look at your outfit or whatever it is, and the fight response is just instinctual because it's pulsing in your body.
What does it look like to complete the cycle? What do you mean by that?
When trauma happens or an emotionally overwhelming event happens, so it could be like a pain episode, it could be, something in childhood, it could be a single event trauma. These responses, if they're not completed at the time, can get stuck in our bodies. So even something like a fender bender, right? So you're at a stoplight, or like people are going, someone slams on their brakes and you don't have time to do it and you slam on their brakes, right? There's this response that can happen that our bodies want to do, right? Like our bodies want to maybe like fight, or our bodies want to flee. And we don't complete that response because you're in a car, right? Like there's this something that's inhibiting you from completing the response. So then in theory, the response gets stuck in our bodies and we can continue to replay this fight response with the desire to complete it at some point. But we might not have the capacity in our nervous systems yet because of life experience to actually complete that response. So working with someone like a somatic experiencing practitioner, or someone who does sensory motor psychotherapy, those type of somatic therapies, working with someone like that can help you gain more regulation in your nervous system to be able to feel into those survival responses and in essence complete them.
Mm.
So that's kind of the quick version, maybe not as nuanced as I'd like it to be. But I think, like, for me, I'm a freezer, right? And I've been working in therapy for a couple of years now to start to like move my own kind of like freeze response that comes up with people pleasing, that comes up with a lot of people pleasing and like doing things myself and overfunctioning and things like that. And it's kind of like a slow thaw of like, I have to gain more capacity in my own nervous system to tolerate the discomfort of like unfreezing in certain situations. So, in terms of body image, if the go-to is like a fight response, I would imagine that you would have to probably gain more ease or space in your nervous system to feel into just like what is, so that the fight response has more space to have some like, it isn't so weighted in one direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that resonated the most with me in there is when you had related it to like a car crash. That's like what my body feels like often. Luckily not anymore, but like when I was very deep in having the pain flare-ups, not even flare-ups, just like an everyday thing, it felt like I was just like constantly being hit by a car.
Uh-huh.
And part of what pelvic floor therapy, like the work that I do with her, has been learning how to breathe, which is
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yeah.
And putting my body in positions that are inherently relaxing. And how do I breathe through the pain when I already have all the tools on board? Like I already have the pain meds in my system, but they're not hitting it quite yet. I already have my TENS unit on and it's not doing anything. Like it's always, it's cool to kind of be able to see, yeah, like that comes into the nervous system relaxation part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like to address the tension and the bracing that's just inherently happening with the pain. You know, we also have to pendulate into that relaxation and space and ease, right? So by being able to focus on like those positions that are inherently restful, right? And maybe bring some more space in your own, you know, body or mind, maybe even like around you, it feels like you have something to come back to, which then will like release some of the tension and bracing, right?
Yeah. 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 I'm trying to think of like what has been so grounding, and the thing that I keep coming back to is the one thing that my pelvic floor therapist has said, and even the back PT that I see now, is like grounding, so much so that like I'm laying on the floor with my feet up on my bed and having some other like pulsing sensation happening too. So again, whether that be like with my TENS unit, or I'm even thinking about like I know it's not EMDR, but like even having like the bilateral stimulation, like that has been so helpful. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. But again, there's only like so much that we can do when, for example, like it feels like someone has just dumped like a vat of acid in my uterus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like
absolutely.
when it is that good, and then body image starts to flare up because it's like, oh my gosh, there's like a level of, I feel so bad for my body that it's going through this. And then at some point it turned into, I can't believe my body's betraying me like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is such a mind fuck.
It really is. Yeah. How do you feel like you've navigated that? And I know that's like ongoing. I would imagine it would be for me. But it is, it's like this fight against yourself, you know, like the betrayal and then feeling like you want to disconnect from it, I'm sure, in lots of ways.
Yeah, honestly, it has been somewhat helpful for the disconnection to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Like it has been helpful for me to kind of like do my best to check out and think like, if I could just like place my body over here and then I'm over here, like that would be great for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Dissociation is a really adaptive response. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And then it's interesting though, because as soon as, you know, this different medications I'm on and then navigating the pain medication that I'm on, it's things have slowly gotten better in the sense that I can now navigate when I wake up in the morning what kind of like a pain day it's going to be. So depending on how intense it'll be, I know, okay, today is a day where I can't go without XYZ, or today is a day where I can probably go half the day without taking my pain meds. And I've had to look at that as progress, which for me, as this, like, I wouldn't call myself very type A, but I do have like those perfectionistic tendencies. Like thinking about my progress now is being able to go a half day without having pain meds in me. That has been so hard.
Yeah.
And having another like win is like not having to move clients around for a week.
Yeah.
That has also been like, well, that should be the default. Like, you shouldn't be doing this, XYZ. Like, you should be on top of it. Like, why haven't you gotten this under control? Blah, blah, blah. So it's been a lot of trying to cut myself some slack, which is so hard. And I feel like something that I'm still always trying to figure out.
Yeah. The journey of self-compassion, right? Like it's a journey of a lifetime. What do you feel like when you are having body image flare, what's most helpful, do you feel like, if they are coinciding with pain episodes or weeks or days or anything really? What's kind of moved the needle for you in your experience?
Yeah. I think comfort is the one thing that comes to mind. Comfort is in if it is coinciding with a pain flare up, I have to, like, I mean, pants are normally out of the question anyway, because I just, like, I can't stand jeans. But, like, having something very stretchy on my abdomen has been helpful. Heat sometimes has been helpful, even just, like, for grounding purposes. But now it's, like, so hot and gross and humid out that that's not
humid.
fun.
Yeah.
And being able to sometimes connect and other times disconnect, whether that be like I'm doing some gentle stretching, but at some point it might turn into, okay, I need to stop this. I'm too in it. Or I feel like too overstimulated with the sensations that are happening in my body. It feels like the phrase that it keeps coming to is like slow living, like very much like slowing down that day, making my favorite coffee in the morning, being able to stay hydrated throughout the day, making sure that like maybe preparing meals that day is like out of the question for me. So being able to order something or like tell my family and think my mom has just been a plus 10 out of 10 and she'll like drop dinner off at my house. So it's like things like that of like, how can I make today like as easy as possible? And oftentimes I have 2 dogs, so it usually involves them too. So being able to like take their mind off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So having lots of support, right? Think about the collapse versus support thing, right? Like having lots of support to uphold you in those moments of just like actual suffering and distress.
Yeah.
I don't specialize in chronic pain or anything like that, but I do know that with chronic pain, our entire like sensory map rearranges itself, right? So interoception changes. Our nervous systems do a lot of really interesting things that can like increase the amount of pain that we experience, because that's just like what it does, right? The vagus nerve, it does that. It's a sensory nerve. And so it's interesting to think about how with chronic pain and body image, how the flares can go alongside of each other. And then outside of that, like you're working on now, you shared, is that like getting into your body and working with your nervous system to try to like reroute or renegotiate what's happening internally, when you can. But it's like everything is so interconnected. And then the cognitions of body image can just feel so deep and so hard when you're suffering so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually haven't looked into too much of the science part of it, but that's so interesting how you just explained that. But it does feel like I'm more ready to kind of like understand that piece, and I am very interested in it.
Well, I would imagine when you were experiencing this, you were just literally surviving, right? Like
Yeah.
survival so important, right? The science and the understanding the whys and the hows, so important.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Survival. Quite literally
Yeah.
trying to stay afloat.
Yeah, doing whatever you had to do to like make it through the day and through the week and pay your bills
Yeah.
and all of the things that I imagine were such a struggle when you were first like thrust into this experience.
Yeah. 100%.
Is there anything else you feel like you want to share about body image, chronic pain?
I think the support of like going back to the support piece has been so important. I've joined like some endometriosis support groups, and those can be hit or miss just depending on like what people's journeys have looked like, of course. But connecting with other people via Instagram about like what their journey looks like and their supports. I I'm gonna butcher her name, but I follow this one woman on Instagram. I believe her handle is endometriosis M, and I think it's Emma. She posts a lot about her journey, and to the point where she's even needed like aids in terms of like crutches or a walker to be able to get around with her pain. So it's felt so validating that like there are communities out there for exactly what you're navigating, whatever it is. And unfortunately it takes like a little bit of digging to figure out where those safe spaces are, but it feels like once you hit it, it's like, oh, it's so in your head, it's not visible. So and then it gets to the point where it's like, oh my god, did I just like make that up? Because then the next day you could be totally fine.
Right.
And just knowing that you're not making it up, like your experience is valid, you are experiencing a very hard thing, and no one else has that experience of being in your body. So if anyone else has a comment of like, oh, it's confusing, like you seem better today, like what's going on? They don't have that experience of living that.
Right. Yeah, so like validate the shit out of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so hard when again, going back to that like people pleasing. It's like, but I want other people to validate me and like tell me that I'm experiencing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so hard. So validation, self-validation, validation from people you care about, the support.
Yes.
Yeah. And as much compassion for yourself, for your body that you can muster, even though it can be feel really inaccessible during those flares, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And therapy.
Yes. Shout out to all the therapists out there.
You guys are doing the work. Let me tell you.
Hey, so are you. Well, speaking of your work, tell everyone about your practice, all the cool stuff, where to find you.
Yeah. So I own a practice called A Soft Place to Land. We're based in Lehigh Valley, and we are multidisciplinary. So that means that we have nutrition, dietitians on board, and therapists. So really specializing in eating disorders, disordered eating, chronic dieting, body image care. And then we offer a few other things. So trying to get some groups off the ground, and we have something coming up, hopefully by the end of the summer, for college students who have no idea how to cook, which is what we've been seeing. Yeah.
I love
so
that. I needed that when I was a college student. I feel like I still need that.
Right?
Like, can I come?
Yeah. I remember like freshman year, like, okay, this is how you do the laundry. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So hopefully that'll be coming out by the end of the summer.
Super cool.
And then sporadically, I also run groups for those in eating disorder recovery and larger bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And you have a new group starting, right? A new group?
Yes.
Yes.
It starts on the 12th, which is next week. Yeah.
Okay, next week. What's the 12th? Let's look at the day.
I think it's a Wednesday.
Okay, so it will be starting the day that this airs. So
Well,
if you can catch it, catch it. It's a much needed space.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of your journey and what you're still kind of navigating in this messy middle. And yeah, you're doing beautiful work alongside of it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me and letting me share. It's like healing to like talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that there's so many people who will benefit from just hearing the like raw reality that don't necessarily hear about it all the time. You know, it's something that needs to be spoken about more.
I think the one thing if I could say to take through any of this episode is like pain during periods isn't normal, and it's very understudied, and we're just trying like figuring it out now. So pain isn't normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you deserve genuine, weight inclusive, amazing care.
Yes. And also drop a resource. If you think that you may have endometriosis or any type of pain, look up Nancy's Nook. And I can give Sarah to link that in the show notes.
Yep.
It's a Facebook group and a website, and that's where I found my surgeon.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing resource. Well, thank you. I will definitely link that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks again for coming on. So appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Come on back. You will be back for something else, a special project later to come later this summer. Megan will be back, and I'll share about that once I have it all figured out. I have it half figured out right now. So all right, everybody. We will be back next week for another episode of season 2. And until then.